So today we're just going to pick up from where we left off previously. But we got to go back to when I had you guys last week. Because when I saw you last week, we had that when the stock market crashes, you have to kind of keep in mind. The stock market crashing is not a cause of the Great Depression. It's just the signal. It's just the spark. It's when the stock market falls apart, people start to say, well, there are going to be some more economic troubles ahead. Now, Craig, this is where we left off, is that right? We're good here? Okay. When things are this bad, when you have an economy that's crumbling, the American people want it fixed. They want it stopped. So if you're going to stop this, you got to go to the people who might have some power to do something about it. The American people look to the federal government and say, stop this, fix it, do something before it gets worse. And here's the federal government telling the American people, look, this isn't the first bad economic situation we've been in. Economics go up, they go down, it goes up, it goes down. There are good times, there are bad times. We're just in a bad time. And to be perfectly honest, we don't even have the power to fix it. The federal government, for years before this, has said, we don't have that power. Pull out the Constitution and say, look, nothing in here about affecting the economy. We can't do anything. We can do something we've done in the past, but I don't think it's going to impact things a whole lot. What Congress does is they pass what's called the Holly Smoot Tariff, the biggest tariff in American history up to that point. Now, before we kind of get into it, we've talked about tariffs before. Tariffs are just a tax on any imported good. Anything coming into the nation has to pay a tax if you're going to sell it to the American people. Now, I want to kind of do this in such a way to kind of make this a little more tangible. Let's pretend that the Europeans are selling chairs. Now, those Europeans want access to the American market. They want Americans to buy their chairs because there are millions and millions of people in the United States who might want to buy it. So the Europeans make the chair, make it for $10, sell it for $20 here. If you have a $20 chair made by the Europeans, and right next to it is the exact same chair made by Americans for the exact same price, do you really care which one you buy? Doesn't really matter. So a tariff artificially inflates the price of an international competitor. So I'm just throwing out numbers here. Let's pretend it's 100% tariff. So now this European chair, they were selling it for $20 here in the United States. Now they got to pay a $20 tax. So if you're going to pay the tax, you got to get your money back. So now this $20 chair, they sell for $40. This chair sells for $40, made in England, we'll say. The exact same chair made in America sells for $20. Which one are you buying now? Buying the $20, buying the American chair. So the idea behind the tariff is, it's designed to protect your domestic manufacturers. It's designed to make them more competitive against an international producer.
Good afternoon. Please pardon the interruption. This is a reminder that tomorrow juniors will be taking the ACT test. Students, make sure you check your Creek email for your room assignment if you haven't already done so. We will be using the West and IC buildings for testing. Teachers, if you could help us by making sure all desks are set up facing the same direction in rows before you leave today, that would be greatly appreciated. Thank you.
So again, let's kind of go back to this example. Now you've got this tariff in place to protect American manufacturers. Now let me just go ahead and ask, are those American manufacturers happy that the tariff goes into place? Does it reduce competition? Yeah, sure. All right. So at least it's something. Here's kind of the problem, though. If we shut down the American market to European competitors, are they just going to say, well, what are you going to do? I guess we can't sell in America anymore. Or are they going to respond? How could these Europeans respond? What could they do if we do this? What do you think, Steve?
Set a tariff on our goods?
Sure. They just do the same thing. They put a tariff on any goods coming from America into Europe. So this tariff almost has the opposite effect. Now, we are shutting down our markets to any international suppliers. They can't sell over here, and we can't sell over there. This is slowing down the international marketplace. There's an old saying that says, when goods no longer cross borders, armies will. We've got some real serious issues as all the major industrial powers are now saying to each other, you can't sell your goods here. It's closed off. And we can't sell our goods over there. It's closed off. It sets up what we're going to see as really the biggest causes of the Great Depression. Now, I want to be certain I do this. Remember, stock market crash, that's just a spark. That's just a signal. The causes are much, much bigger, and some of them have been in place for years before this. They've been building and building and building. First big cause we're going to talk about are going to be these tariffs and war debts shutting down international markets. Now, I was just explaining how those tariffs set up barriers so that these industrial powers can't sell their goods outside of their own borders. But war debt is another big problem that's been in existence ever since 1919. Now, do you remember, when World War I comes to an end, how much money did Germany owe the Allies? Remember what that number was? $33 billion that they owe. Now that $33 billion, it doesn't even exist. There's not that much money in circulation. So here are the Germans, who have been one of the biggest industrial powers in the world before World War I, saying, I don't know what to tell you. Britain, France, even the United States, we don't have any money. So how should they pay them? Let me ask you, if you were a government and you said, I don't have any money, is there a way for a government to fix that problem? How do they get more money? Start printing. Here the Germans just print. Does anyone see a problem with this? What happens when they print a ton of money? Inflation. They're going to get to a point of what's called hyperinflation. Now, we're going to talk more about that a little bit later on. But the next one, number 2, is overproduction. Now, I'm always kind of careful when I do this because the more production you have, the more supply you have. The more supply you have, the lower prices go. But there's a balance between have you produced too much? Now, I always explain this by doing something. I want you to think in your mind, how many TVs do you have in your house right now? Just kind of count it up in your imagination. I have 5. Now, I always think about, could I fit another TV in here somewhere? Because football season. Now, let me explain real fast. Guys, this is a lesson for you, okay? Write this down if you need to. Girls, you can go ahead and judge me right now, okay? Because this was brilliant and dumb, okay? When I was in college, my friends and I realized you can put 2 TVs right next to each other and watch 2 football games at the same time. God bless America. It's called the 2 TV system. I took this into adulthood when I bought my first house. I put 2 TVs right next to each other. Brilliant. It's awesome. Nothing goes wrong. Then I met the girl that would become my wife. She came over and she said, "Why do you have 2 TVs next to each other?" And I said, "Duh, 2 football games." I don't think I have to explain anything more, right, guys? Okay. Girls, I probably have a lot of explanation, don't I? Okay. She told me, she goes, "That's so weird and dumb." I'm like, "You're weird and dumb." No, I'm just kidding. I didn't say that. But she goes, "We can't have like 2 TVs in our living room." So when we got married, I thought about this. 2 TVs or love. And I thought to myself, I sure do love football a lot. I think I made the right choice. I chose the girl instead of the TVs, okay? I know, hard decision to make, so I got rid of one of the TVs. Now, I use this little example because I don't need any more TVs. I'm good. Do you guys, can you think of like a room in your house where you say like, I want a TV in there? Can you envision that? I'll tell you what, my next TV, going in the bathroom. That's when you know you've made it. That's when you're big time and you have a TV in the bathroom. I'm just kidding, it's not gonna happen. Now I use that little example because overproduction is a fine line to walk. You wanna produce enough, but if you can't sell all of them, then it doesn't really matter. So during the 1930s, we're gonna see that our production has gotten to a point where the markets are saturated. There's so many goods that people don't need to buy more. Not to mention how you can no longer sell your goods internationally. The tariffs and the war debts are shutting down international markets. We have too many goods, meaning that you don't need to produce anymore. So if you don't need to produce anymore, what happens to the people in the factories who were producing these things? Do you need them? Fire them. So third thing is buying too much on credit. I'm looking at you for this one, Jacob. Buying too much on credit. Now, I'll be the first to say, buying on credit is not necessarily a bad thing if you keep it within reason. Jacob, you failed that lesson, but that's all right. We're learning now. If you buy too much on credit, you have way too much debt than you'll ever be able to pay back. Jacob, what was the number? You said it was like 3 million something?
It was in the billions.
In the millions of dollars? Okay, we'll just round up to 3
Billions.
Billions?
I think so.
You borrowed billions of dollars from me? How did I let that happen? I blame myself. Having too much on credit makes way too much debt. Now, I use this example because this is probably the one that's most applicable to everyone in America. Most people, if you're going to buy a house, you probably don't have $500,000 in cash to buy a house. Most people have to buy it on credit. It's not necessarily a bad thing as long as you keep paying it off. Now, what I want to talk about in just our last couple minutes here is how people in the cities are going to see economic ruin, and it comes back to really all these causes. Now, we're going to talk cities first. As people's lives are ruined, they're destroyed when the stock market collapses and the economy comes with it. On so many occasions, people had borrowed money to buy their homes. Now, like I say, it's not necessarily a bad thing. But if you can't make the payments, then you lose your house. So every month, you pay into a mortgage. You slowly over years pay it down, and then eventually, after a certain number of years, you own the house. But if you start missing payments, who takes your house?
Not you.
It's not you. It's the person who loaned you the money. That's right, Jake. I'm glad we had this lesson. The bank comes and takes your house. So people have lost everything. They need to find some kind of shelter. This is as bad as it gets. Because during this time, there is no government safety net. There is no unemployment benefits. There are